right, hello folks. This is David Egan from the NOD Training Group. Today's survey is the pecan production and disposition inquiry for February of 2022. Information will be used by USDA agencies to determine crop insurance and disaster aid payments along with other program benefits. This information also helps producers develop marketing plans for their operation, as well as enabling the industry to forecast transportation and storage requirements and evaluate export potential. It's also used by grower organizations to help form policy positions. The project code is 142 Tree Nut Survey. Questionnaires mail out around February 22nd. We do have two different versions. So, version one is the improved pecans only, and that is for Arizona, Georgia, and New Mexico. Version two has improved but also the native or wild pecans, and that is in Oklahoma and Texas. This information will be released on the Non-Citrus Fruit and Nut Annual Report coming out May 4th. Those native or seedling pecans, those are ones that are generally growing wild, usually unattended and not cultivated, but there might be some areas where they are managed and cultivated. On the other hand, their improved varieties are the result of careful grafting and budding and are typically planted in managed cultivated groves. We'll talk about the two versions kind of separately here. So, version one, this is the one that just has those improved pecans, so you don't have to break anything out by the different type. We start off and we want to know if they have any pecan acreage last year in 2021, and then if they had any commercial shelling equipment. And I believe that is so that we can make sure we pick them up on our pecan sheller and processor survey that we're also doing around this time. We want to know how many total acres of pecan trees they maintained in 2021, and then of those, how many were of bearing age. We want the total pounds harvested in shell weight, and then of those total harvested, how many sold or will be sold, once again in shell. From there, we pick up sales of pecans, and with this, we want the average price per pound or the total dollars. Whichever one is fine, just make sure that is in shell weight. Lastly, we want to know if the total crop has been marketed, and then that commercial shelling equipment question, that will come up either at the beginning if they didn't have pecans, or if they did have pecans, it'll come up here at the end. Version 2 starts off the same way as version 1 does. We ask about how many pounds of the 2021 crop they harvested. Again, this is in shell weight. We also want to know if the whole crop has been marketed. Simple yes or no question there. It starts off with the improved variety, so we want to know the total acres of pecan trees that were maintained in 2021, and then how many of those were bearing age. Once again, we want the total pounds harvested in shell weight, and then from that, how many were sold or will be sold, again in shell. Similar to version 1, when we pick up the sales, we want the price as an average price per pound or total dollars, whichever one's fine as long as that is in shell weight. Then we want to know how many acres of wild native pecan trees they maintained in 2021, and then how many were of bearing age. So, kind of same thing basically. However, since these wild pecans can kind of be a little bit different than the managed cultivated groves of improved pecans, if the operator is unsure of how many acres they have, they can provide the actual number of trees. And then we want them to tell us of the total pecans they harvested, how many were wild native pecans, and then of those harvested, how many were sold? Once again, total sales or average price. If the operator says that they are out of business or no longer farming, verify that they are truly out of business. The sum of the parts must equal the total if applicable. So version 2, those improved plus the native have to add back up to the total pounds. Your bearing acres cannot be greater than your total. Make sure that they are including all bearing acres, maybe not. If they possibly didn't harvest some of the bearing acres, that still counts towards the overall bearing acres. If a variety name of pecan was given, that is not a native or seedling pecan. If trees are scattered in a pasture, be sure to get the tree acres and not the entire pasture acres. The total pounds sold cannot be greater than the total pounds harvested. And now we have some information here about a kind of special little project we're doing for the pecan survey and a few other different surveys. The Pecan PDI will be included in the NERD pilot. And you might be asking, what is NERD? Well, that is a slightly unfortunate acronym that stands for Non-Edited Respondent Data. In the past, we've referred to this as Previously Reported Data, or PRD, and now we are calling it NERD, N-E-R-D. We now use raw, unedited data from the respondent or the operator, coming from either web, field interviews, phone interviews, or mail-in returns. Now, as for what you or the operator will see, you'll see pre-filled data from the operator during a previous survey in each applicable box. All data available will be displayed when you enter the record. Here's an example over here. So on June 1, how many total acres did this operation own? And it shows 5,000 is already in the box. So this would be an example of this NERD data or non-edited respondent data showing up in CAPI. Now, which survey the data came from is not included in the pilot. Just know that this was data that we picked up on one of our surveys. On this survey, here are some of the different items that may have this data already pre-filled for you. It might be in the total pecan acres, the bearing acres, the improved pecan variety acres, the improved variety bearing acres, the native and seedling total acres, and the native and seedling bearing acres. So all of those different questions have the possibility to be pre-filled when you open up the record, and so there might already be data in a lot of these questions. How will you use this? Well, enumerators will ask respondents questions using pre-filled non-edited response data. The enumerators will first remind the respondents of the previous reporting time. So this would be something where you say, last time we recorded blank. Is this still correct? We, in this case, being NAS or NASDA. Be careful not to say last time you reported. The information we have recorded as their NERD data may not have been reported by the specific person that is being interviewed. And this is just kind of covering our bases in case we are talking to somebody that we didn't talk to last time. So therefore, that's why you say this is what we recorded, not what you reported. The goal is to use words that remind the operator what was reported for their operation when the data was reported is not included in this information. So once again, just use that reminder still method. Example of this would be last time we recorded that the operation had 40 acres rented or leased from others. Is this information still correct? If the respondent says yes, the enumerator should then, or you should then accept the pre-filled information as the current answer and just move on to the next question. If the respondent says no, then the enumerator or yourself, you should ask the standard question as it's worded in the instrument and change that pre-filled answer to the current respondent's answer. Entering in data should be quite simple. It's the same as what you would do if you had entered in something and then needed to go back and change it. So if the data is correct, however, you just move right along to the next question. Data is based on availability, however, so some records will have data and some will not. Basically, just don't think that it's going to be on there on every record. However, if you open a record and see some data already on there, it doesn't mean you can skip all those questions. It just means that all you do is confirm that that data is correct, keep that number in there, and move along to the next question. So hopefully that helps you speed things up a little bit. If you're reporting an out of business, a refusal, or an inaccessible record, you don't have to worry about removing that NERD data from CAPI. These records will be scrubbed before reading into our system. So please follow your normal procedures as it relates to out of business, refusals, accessibles, anything like that. If you're entering in complete data from paper, you will have to change all non-valid NERD that is pre-filled in CAPI. One thing, just as an FYI, producers will be notified of the presence of NERD. So we have an impact statement in the pre-survey letter and then an impact statement on the web version as well. Those pre-survey letters will be sent from each RFO with that impact statement, and it just lets them know that some answers in your online questionnaire may be pre-filled with information from previous NAS surveys. For the operators doing this online, they will see the same statement as well. The goal of the statement is to ensure that producers review and update this previously filled data when valid. So once again, the major highlights, this NERD, that is non-edited respondent data, will be pre-filled for all applicable fields. Some records will have this, some will not. Use those pre-filled fields to verify current totals. Again, use that reminder or still method. Last time we recorded, does the operation still have blank? If the pre-filled data is correct, you just skip on to the next question. Once again, if it's out of business, refusal, inaccessible, you can just leave that data on the record. Once you submit it as a refusal, there is a program that will scrub all that data from the record so that it's not going in as complete. Operators have already received or will receive written and virtual notification of this. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to reach out to your NASDA coordinator for questions and concerns. All right, and one more special request for out of business records in general. We have the 2022 Census of Agriculture that's coming up that we are mailing out in December. We need to contact every operation that was in business for any part of 2022. Therefore, if an operation tells you that they are out of business, please ask if they were in business at any time during 2022 and leave a note, because we do need to talk to anybody that was operating for any part of 2022, even if it was just a day or two. All right, and now getting back to the pecans. In conclusion, leave plenty of notes on this survey. If you encounter anything, maybe such as storm damage has caused problems in their operation, any operator comments about prices, really anything odd or anything about the crop specifically, we love having those, and the RFOs really appreciate having that information. Contact your supervisor or regional field office if you have any questions. Go through a few practices on your iPad. It's really not a tough or complicated or long survey, but always make sure that you are familiar with it before you interview. Last but certainly not least, thank you for all the hard work you do on all of our surveys, and especially this February pecan production and disposition inquiry.